Okay, guys, I think that's going to be everyone for tonight. Bigger turnout than we expected in January, so thanks for coming by. A couple new faces. Thanks for joining us, guys. Welcome. So everyone else has heard the spiel before, but just for you guys really quickly, maybe our new members, maybe you forgot about last time. It's like our pledge of allegiance, I guess. So we are Merawine. We are a biodynamic natural wine importer. I guess we're still figuring that out what we actually do, but we bring really cool wine, and we sell it to restaurants across the province. And then we also have this tasting group. So we meet the first Monday of every month.
We talked about today to changing it to the first flower day of every month, but that would just really complicate
the first fruit day of the biodynamic calendar. Yeah. Because sometimes
I said flower. I meant fruit.
Sometimes there's like none for
the whole month.
Like the whole month. Yeah. Like sorry, it's canceled.
I can't drink wine this month.
So really quickly, if you want, do you want to hang your jacket up, Miss Summers?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. I want
you know what?
To see you.
There's a hook right here.
Oh,
look at this.
Oh, goodness.
Wow,
thank you.
You're welcome. And we can even, you okay if you can see? Sure. You're good? Yeah, cool.
That was just beautiful.
As long as you can see Leah, it doesn't matter about me. Yeah. So we do, for drop-ins, feel free to come by anytime. Just let us know, $20 a person. We are doing, the tasting group is $120 a month. The last day it's $120, right?
So
today.
This month.
This month.
So at the end of January,
it's going up. Everyone else gets the same price. You guys are
everybody
grandfathered.
who's already a member is grandfathered in, so your price won't change.
Yeah. But anybody who comes this next month, we're going up to 140.
we want to bring in cooler wine.
Yeah, we need a bit more wiggle room to bring in cooler wine. So if you want to sign up, January is the deadline.
And if you have friends in Saskatoon, we are doing our first in-person tasting group in Saskatoon. It's the third Sunday of the month. So if you have friends in Saskatoon that want to be a part of the club, but they don't live in Regina, there's options in Saskatoon now too.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be run by our friend Matt, who is the head server at Primal Pasta. So it's gonna be like our sister kind of tasting group. So we'll do the same wines. So yeah, if you know anybody there, feel free to spread the word. Well, enough about that. Enough about this kitschy sales pitch. Let's drink some wine. So, first off,
it's a sales pitch. I think it's already sold.
I guess so.
It's just like a reminder.
You know me, I don't like sell stuff. We're going to be drinking some wine from a winery called from Claus Pressinger from Austria. This is the wine we got in the glass right now, but first we're going to start off with a little bit of history of Austria and history of how this wine got to Saskatchewan. So first, getting the wine to Saskatchewan is a little bit different, actually more difficult, believe it or not, than going the way we normally go, because the SLGA doesn't pick up wine in Austria. So for us to get wine from Austria to a port in Spain or France or wherever where they pick up, there's always been a little bit of discussion of who is going to be responsible for the wine in case the boat sinks on that little journey. So what we did is we teamed up with our good friend Doug Reichel, who we've mentioned a few times in this tasting group, who's like the OG wine importer of Saskatchewan. He's been doing it for like 25 years. So Doug is really great, kind of lower end quality wines. If you see Doug's sticker, support local, he's a great dude. So essentially what we did to get this in, we contacted the winemaker like we normally do, agreed on a price, and then we paid for the shipping to get to Doug's warehouse in France, and then Doug brought it into the wet warehouse in Winnipeg, which during COVID, and then there was also a strike at the Montreal port, so it went like France to Montreal to Halifax, I think back to Montreal, back to Halifax, back to Montreal, Manitoba, and then we placed the order through Wolf's through Manitoba. So quite the adventure getting that wine here. But the good news is now it's opened up some doors for us, so exciting for us and for you guys. Like now we can order wine from Greece, from Austria, from Georgia. What's the place that you wanted to get? Armenia, right? So
there's a lot of cool wines that are up and coming. I mean, they've been making wine there for hundreds of years, but getting access to them in our market hasn't really been a thing. And so this sort of opens up a way of getting some of those wines that you wouldn't normally have access to, all across Eastern Europe, and it's kind of exciting.
So once we figure out the actual, this is more like a trial run, so the logistics of that, we're gonna we're gonna be like on a on like probably a 6-month trip where we're only going to drink like Eastern European wines. So the variety might dwindle a little bit, but it'll be cool stuff. So that being said, we don't really get any Austrian wines here. So to reiterate, people think that maybe I know a lot about wine. I don't. Right? I really, really like wine. You can study wine for your whole life and you don't know shit. Right? There's so much to learn. So we kind of geared learning to what we have. So me today learning about the history of Austrian wine, I was like blown away by how cool Austrian wine is in the history of Austria. Because I've only been really drinking Austrian wine for maybe like 15, 20 years, and Austrian wine has only really come back into the forefront from the natural wine scene in the last 10 years, but we can't get any here. It's like a brand new thing for me. So we'll talk a bit about the history of Austria. It's been around like most countries in Europe, been making wine since like the, kind of 10th century, the first history of vines being planted there by the Gauls and all these people the tribes, Romans, all this kind of jazz. But where it really kind of takes off is post-Napoleon times, right? Where Austria is kind of more of a designated country. The wine industry really, really takes off. And what they're known for is more kind of Grüner Veltliner and then some sweet wine, right? They're really known for more making sweet wine. And Austria has had it real tough in the last century alone. So you can imagine post-Napoleonic times, great. Things are going really well. Boom, phylloxera hits, right? So phylloxera, we've spoken in the past, is that louse that ravaged Europe in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So
Ate rootstocks,
killed all the vines, killed the wine industry, almost killed the wine industry in France, right? So imagine Austria. So that's, boom, hit number one. They rebuild for 10 years. First World War happens, right? Austria is kind of in the middle of all the warring countries. So what the First World War did was they lost a ton of really, really valuable winemaking land. So we're talking, most notably would be Friuli, which is now part of northern Italy, which is a really, really underrated, fantastic winemaking region where they make a lot of orange wine actually, in the northern part of Italy. They lost parts of the thing called the Dalmatian coast in Croatia, where they make really great wine. Slovenia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, all these areas make really great wine. They're just not kind of in the forefront. But like a lot of prime winemaking land they lost. So that was the first, or the third blow, I guess. Mm-hmm. They rebuild again. World War II happens. What happened to Austria in World War II is people literally drank them dry, right? You ever see like that movie Band of Brothers, and like the end, they're all like sitting in Austria in a castle. Soviet and Allied soldiers drank all the wine they could get their hands on. They broke into people's cellars, so like they just had no wine left, right? So 50s and 60s, they rebuild again, right? And they're really, really coming into the international market, known again for that kind of sweet wine, which is it's a botrytized wine. It's Nieder something. I can't pronounce any of the words, just so you guys know. Niederschlüsschen, let's call it that. And white wine. 1985, a few unscrupulous characters decided to put, I wrote it down, diethanol glycol in the wine. So it's a poison, right? And I think that's probably where they took that famous Simpsons episode, "Il met de l'antifreeze dans le vin." So some people did that to give it like a botrytis character. So like
it's
that,
probably like viscosity too.
Yeah,
like
viscosity, like so syrupy,
yeah.
More like kind of botrytis-y kind of fungal nose. So obviously that is going to, they didn't kill anybody, but they poisoned people, right? So your reputation internationally and locally kind of went down the drain. So in the 90s, they kind of said, look, okay, we need to figure our shit out. So the government stepped in a little bit more. We have higher regulation, a bit more control. They split up the region in a bit more sub-regions. So Burgenland, Kamtal, I can't remember the other name of the one, but they have like actual regions now. And coinciding with that, right, you have kind of a wine industry being reborn again and really, really coming up with natural wine. So you've got a couple winemakers that are younger, that clearly are doing kind of more trendy, modern things. We want to know what's in our product that we're eating or drinking and what's going into it. So it really kind of cool. Like Austrian wine is like a pioneer
Yeah,
for
it's kind of a
natural
combination
wine.
of, if the sweet wine was the wine that poisoned us, so to say, they started focusing on making dry wine. And in a lot of cases, producers would do natural low intervention winemaking, but either way, you'll experience drier wines from Austria from, the early 90s onward.
Mm-hmm. And now today, what we're seeing out of Austria is like quite a bit of natural wine. Even the reds for the newer winemakers, what we're seeing right here, that kind of lighter color, a little bit lower alcohol, definitely lower sugar, and higher acid, right? So that acidity that makes the side of your mouth water. So super food-friendly wines. We were talking in our podcast today about wine trends in 2021, and that's one of the ones they're predicting where people are going to be going toward less of these big, cloying, kind of oaky, full-bodied reds, which, I mean, we've seen in the last 5 years, that's what we want to drink, and that's what we kind of share with you guys. Mm-hmm. But kind of on a worldwide scale where, we don't want to drink a 15% Shiraz from Australia that's like going to give me blackout drunk and give me a huge headache. I want something like this that's 12.5%, that's light, that has a high acidity, right? That's important. It makes our mouth water, makes us salivate, it gets us ready to eat, so it's much more food friendly. It won't cannibalize the food. And then also what's going in it. Well, this is made from grapes, right? That's it. There's no maybe a little bit of sulfur, but that's it. So it's kind of like Austria is like kind of like really in a great kind of uptrend right now. Who knows what's going to happen? It seems like every 20 years someone comes along and like destroys the wine industry, but quite resilient, which is kind of cool. So let's talk a bit about the wine we have. I fucking love this wine. Leah and Bryce they like it.
No.
I love this wine.
I disagree with that. I really like this wine. I think that when you first tasted this, you were like, this is the best wine I've ever had in my whole life.
I didn't say that. I never
You were
said
like
that.
over the moon, and so we come in and we're like, oh, we're really excited to taste this wine. And
They like drove here to come and try it.
Yeah, this is really good, but like you way oversold this, Josh.
Yeah, well, I really like it. I don't know if anybody remembers that the Scout Vineyard kind of looks like this. That label, that was the co-ferment. It really reminds me of that, right? So for me, this is what I call like a natural wine that's like, I call it lightning in a bottle. It's like electric. Like it makes my mouth hum and buzz. Like it really gets me excited. Is it the greatest wine I've ever had in my life? No, of course not. Is it like, would I consider this like a super elegant, refined wine? Absolutely not. It's really fun though. Like I love the way it makes my mouth feel. Like, it's the best way to describe it.
It's very playful.
Yeah.
It's very approachable. There's so many neat characteristics about it. Like, it just sort of changes even on your palate. It's a little bit effervescent to start. It's a little bit bubbly. And then you get all of that red fruit. And then it finishes really elegantly. So it's like, to your point, there's a lot going on with this wine. It's not overly complicated, but it's really, really fun and playful. Mm-hmm. I think what I was reading about the winemaker, he was sort of going along the lines of like an entry-level Beaujolais or something like that with this in terms of style. So it should be fresh, fruity, light-bodied. We tried to serve it slightly chilled. We actually forgot to chill it. But it definitely can have a little bit of a chill on it, and it really just brightens everything up. But with this one, it was funny because Bryce and I tried it and it was too cold. We let it warm up and it was a little bit better. Josh tried it, it was a little bit too warm. We cooled it down. So just sort of play with the temperature as you go, but it's really fun. It is, as you can expect with some of our other wines too, unfined, unfiltered. So there is some sediment in the bottom. Bruce, you got the last little bit of it, so just watch that last mouthful in case there's any in there. Not a bad thing whatsoever, but just so you know.
Dried crickets. It's fine.
So yeah, when you're pouring it, just watch for that towards the end of the bottle. It'll have a little bit of sediment in it.
So this is going to be the Pusta Libre, which is kind of like their entry level red wine. Pusta means wide free land. The Pusta Libre, that translates to wide free land. And the Puzza is an area kind of around where they are. They're in the Gaul region. There's a big lake there, again, Nieder something. It's a lot of words. But around that area, it's known as the Puzza. So this is actually a blend from several different of their vineyards that they just kind of pull. So that's kind of like, it's like a wide open land, fun, playful wine. Grape varieties are going to be Zweigelt, which we'll get into a little bit in the next wine. Zweigelt is actually a kind of a crossbreed between Blaufränkisch and Saint Laurent. And then this is also Saint Laurent. So it's kind of like Saint Laurent and then a half Saint Laurent, half Zweigelt blend. But like Leah said, just really fun, kind of fresh.
Where else would you see Saint Laurent grown? Like you don't see it single variety. Well, I've never seen it single variety.
It's native to Austria. Saint Laurent, I feel like there's some in Canada.
Okay.
I feel like there's some
Niagara?
in Niagara region. I feel like I've seen some there.
Interesting.
It'd be interesting to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a French name.
Yeah.
So, but it's indigenous to Austria.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think of this one? It's cool, right? So these are going to be 25-year-old vines. This is limestone soil, right? So it's going to give us a bit more minerality, a bit more freshness.
How do you say that in Austrian?
That's in the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The next one.
Jumping ahead.
Don't worry my jokes. And then it's done, in stainless steel. So it's meant to be fresh, fun. And I just love the packaging because it looks like an old Coke bottle. So it just makes me want to chug. Like, this is like picnic wine, right? Like hot summer day, put it in a cooler and drink it out of the bottle. I feel like it should be like a beer cap and everyone could just drink their own and cheers and drink it out of the bottle. That's how I think it should be. Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thoughts, questions about the first wine or the very condensed history of Austrian winemaking? No? All right, well, we'll finish this up and we'll come around and pour the next wine for you. All right, guys, everyone has the second wine?
Far away.
Beautiful. All right, so we're going to be drinking the Zweigelt Kieselstein, which means pebbles. So that refers to the type of soil. So it's pebbles for the soil. The next one we're going to drink is going to be different. So Zweigelt, like we said, that is going to be the grape variety. It's a blend of Blaufränkisch and Saint Laurent. We'll talk a bit about Claus first, the winemaker, right? So Klaus Pressinger is a relatively young guy. By the looks of his pictures, he's probably in his late 30s, like maybe my age. He's really handsome, which kind of pisses me off. He's more handsome than me. Way more handsome than me. He makes wine. Yeah. Leah's like, yeah. So Klaus Pressinger, again, is part of this new kind of wave of young Austrian winemakers. And he's pretty unapologetic about the way he makes wine and the way he does it. So they call him he's like a surfer at heart, basically. He went to school in, again, I'm going to butcher the name.
I need to say like the winemaking school in Austria.
No.
Austrian wine.
Klosterneuburg. So we spoke a bit about that post-Napoleonic kind of wine surge. In 1860, they did establish a winemaking school in Klosterneuburg in Austria, which is still attended today. So that's where he went to school in the early 2000s. He then traveled to California, actually, which is kind of interesting, for 3 years to do stages at a couple wineries there. The reason I say it's interesting is because typically in California, you're going to have a little bit more of a commercial, more mass-produced. It's quite a different climate, depending on where he went in California. But just a different style of wine. Like, nothing about these wines has anything to do with what I would call California style. I don't know if you...
Yeah, whereas if you look at like the Lewitt wines are very much influenced by like Burgundy.
Yeah, the Beaujolais, yeah.
So there's no influence this way.
And that happens sometimes where winemakers will do a stage somewhere and be like, okay, this is exactly what I don't want to do. Where I want to do the opposite of all of this. So that might very well be the case. So he came home, started making wine in 2002. In 2006, they turned into a biodynamic winery. So within 4 years, he was like, yeah, we're not going to do any chemicals, no pesticides, no herbicides, terroir-driven stuff. But reading up about him, and Lee, I think you might have a better kind of grasp of like his winemaking philosophy. I don't know if you want to share that. Like, it's pretty, like I said, it's unapologetic. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of arrogant.
Yeah, I think unapologetic is the right way to describe it. Like, there's definitely a little bit of arrogance there. Like, I don't want to make wine like anybody else. I want to make wine like me and like I like. So there's no mentors. There's no, what's the word that I'm looking for where like you look up to someone? because you like their style, their philosophy, and you use that as inspiration. He doesn't
Like-
really do that. He's like, I'm me, this is the wine I want to make, and the way that I'm going to make it, and either you like it or you don't, sort of thing.
Mhm.
So,
Which, yeah, like it's, I think unapologetic is a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
There is some arrogance to that, but there's also some cojones to that, right? Like, this
Well, he
is what
makes
I'm
great
gonna-
wine.
and the wine speaks for
Yeah.
itself. His wine is very good,
yeah.
but he's completely selfish. He's making it in the way that he wants to make it, in the way that he feels is the right way to make it. So we're talking about terroir-driven wine, very little to no sulfur added, all indigenous grape varieties, and also all what we call ambient yeasts, or what's the other one? Natural yeasts, indigenous yeasts,
Oh, okay.
right? So it's spontaneous. So they're not buying yeast. It's like yeast that's from that area in the air or on the grapes. So that's how they do their wine. We're going to talk a little bit more of that little group for the next wine. But talking about this actual wine, so like we said, it's Weigelt, right? So it's that blend of Saint Laurent and Blanc Frankish. We're getting a little bit more serious than this guy. These are going to be 30-year-old vines. We're still doing it in stainless steel, right, to keep that freshness. We're doing it in pebble soil, so that kind of like, it's not a rich soil, so the vines are going to have to strive a little bit to get all the nutrients they need to produce grapes. They actually do it in a big, it's called a foudre, so it's like a big wooden barrel on the leaves, so on the dead yeast cells for 6 months, and then they bottle it. So it's not really a, you're not going to leave it in the barrel for like in a barrel for 2 years, right? In my experience drinking Austrian wine from what I've had, and this is like 15 years ago, Blanc Frankish, Weigelt, they were bigger, kind of muscular, more tannic, more oaky wines, where this is not that, right? This is that kind of new trend we're talking about. They're lighter, they're fresher, a little bit. These are only 12.5% alcohol, and that beautiful high acidity, right? We're still getting that kind of nice high acidity. Stainless, 6 months on these. So Weigelt is gonna be, I guess it's like would you call it a medium-bodied wine?
Yeah, I think this is a medium bodied wine,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think, to your point about how it's described and using indigenous grape varieties, Austria is a cool climate, right? So it's going to produce wines that have higher acid, lower sugar, different levels of tannins that you can expect. And especially because this isn't aged and there's no oak in it, you're really going to notice that freshness and that acidity. One thing that winemakers tend to do sometimes is they'll add sugar to a wine to balance that acidity, but because this is natural low intervention wine, they're not going to do that. What you, like, depending on what the vintage was that year, what the weather was during the year, will depend on how acidic these wines are. So when we order this again next year, we might notice, hey, it's actually a little bit fruitier and less acidic, just because of the year that they may have had. But I think it's a great expression of terroir if we think about the climate that exists there, and not really jumping in to say, oh, I need to make it this way or this way to make it more appealing. This is what it is, and this is what the vintage was too.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I love, and I don't know if you were going to talk about this or not, but
No.
just like the packaging in general. So like the Pusa Libre is really, really fun, to Josh's point, like it's your own individual Coke bottle. The packaging for the Klaus Pressinger line is like super clean and linear, and if you look at a picture, if you go online to their website,
I'm gonna grab it, yeah.
and you pull up their winery, it is like crazy linear. It's so like geometric and beautiful and just like lean and crisp and clean.
It's
and
so
I love,
Austrian, like it's so
yeah.
Austrian.
So the packaging, but the cool thing about the wines, and you're going to notice when you get them, is the corks have a little emoji, like winky, tongue out smiley face. So it's also really playful. Like it's just clean, fresh, but also super approachable and playful in that sense. It's just all sort of like it all sort of fits together in terms of what Klaus is trying to do, the product he's putting out that's in the bottle, out of the bottle, everything like that. So.
I'll come around and show you guys the
Sure.
picture, yeah. And then,
It's kind of strange to put a red wine on the leaves.
yeah.
We didn't really mention, you kind of went passing on that. That's a white wine technique.
Yeah, it's a white wine technique. So when you put a white wine on the leaves, you're gonna get a little bit more of like that kind of yeasty flavor, right? Like that fresh baked bread,
It's also a bit of richness to balance out the acidity. So a lot of times white wines will be more acidic than red wines when you're going through the winemaking process. And so when you age a wine on lees before you bottle it, it gives it that richness that balances out that acidity. And so I imagine the intent here would be to do the same. So even though it's traditionally more done with white wines, this is a really high acid wine. So to have it on lees balances out and gives it that little bit of body and contrast as well. So it's kind of cool because to your point, Bryce, red wines typically are not aged on lees.
Well, in the WSET book, it says it's a complete white wine making technique.
Yeah.
They don't even mention it.
But we have to talk, like WSET is so traditional in terms of how you learn about wine, whereas a lot of the stuff that natural winemakers are doing and low intervention winemakers are doing is like completely different than what you would learn about in a textbook. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, what do you guys think? Yeah?
Yes.
How does it compare to the first wine for you?
Oh, really?
A little bit more body, yeah, a little more structure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's almost like a little bit, if this is like super fun and a teenager who's out there, this is like the 20-year-old who's like, I still know how to have a good time, but I'm going to do it a little bit classier. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
She's weird. This stuff.
Yeah. That's because nowhere's on the line. That's because when I was
Josh like this one. I like this.
So you're in real estate, so this is like a bunch of pictures of wine right here. So like it's pretty modern looking. Yeah, it looks like a spaceship. Right? Yeah. Or a bunker sheet. Yeah, I know, it's like, and look at this stupid guy. He's not ready. Look at this guy. Making wine.
The Tom Brady of, no, I don't know that he would be the 100% the Tom Brady of wine. That's a bad comparison. I do love me some Tom Brady though. Wait, so my husband is
A lot of natural wine is
a
like
Patriot
fun, kind of
and he has been
untraditional
like
wine
his whole
label.
entire life. And so
And the
now
wineries
we're
like
like
in the garage,
having
like
an
very
internal
simple.
conflict.
Whereas this is
So he's
like,
do I cheer for
this
the
is
bus
really like
or
such
do
a
I
weird
cheer for
shape.
this? And he's like, no,
Weird
it's
shape,
still
and it's like
cheering. I'm
super
okay,
modern.
so
And it's
say
really
by chance
clean
you
inside
the
too.
bus
Like a lot of the winemakers we do like go washing.
I kind of think about
So
that.
it's like kind of cool contrast, but it's like,
Yeah.
the wine is really fun. The labeling's pretty serious and direct. And it's got a little emoji. And then,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Claus. Thank you, Claus. New world in the old world. How's everyone like the wine?
Good, people are nodding.
That's why I group tonight. We should spike the wine next month.
Rose and Camo.
Well, LSDs.
You took that to a whole other level.
What's that group called?
Yeah, right. Get a little bit of mushrooms.
Pastiole,
I'm still in the frame here. Yeah, it's because I just turned it. Oh. Bryce, don't cage me in, Bryce. Every time I move it, you're like, out of the frame. Everyone's bored? All right, guys. So, before we do the last wine, again, thanks for coming. So our group members, you're going to actually get all 3 wines this month, which is awesome. Take 3. And I hope you enjoyed them. Next month, we're going to do it on the 1st. There's no holiday, right? February? We don't know what we're doing for next month. It depends on what arrives. If anything arrives that we ordered from October, but we'll have some fun stuff to do, don't worry. As always, feel free to hang out after. We'll put the music back on. You guys can finish the wine. I usually open up some wine to drink. If you want to buy some wine to drink too, feel free to do that, but you have to do it through Homestead. And then for our new friends, if you guys are interested in joining up, don't be shy. Come talk to us. If not, we won't get mad at you. There's no pressure sales. It's not like.
And you're welcome back another time.
Yeah, I feel like, has anyone ever gone to a timeshare seminar.
That's what you feel like you are?
Oh my god, it's the most insane thing I've ever been in my life. Like I was having a panic attack.
Yeah.
I was like, babe, I think we have to buy this.
Yeah.
They're like, it's only $1,200 a month. I'm like, but it's over 99 years. I'm like, oh my god, it was crazy. It's crazy. The whole pitch was so aggressive. So it's not like that. And if you do decide to sign up, so you're saving that $20 fee. So two of you can come, bring a guest. If you can't make it, bring another guest. And cancel anytime, put a pause in it anytime. Like I said, we have a couple that are just had a baby, so they're pausing it for 3 months.
But there's no limit if you just come for the tasting group too. Like just one.
Yeah, pretty easy peasy. If you have any questions, you can talk to any of our members. Just don't look at them directly in the eye. They're very worried about that. They're all like P. Diddy. Yeah. Just kidding. Everyone's very nice. So we're talking again a bit more about Claus and that kind of new wave of younger Austrian winemakers. So this is actually Bryce who discovered this. They do have a little bit of a group. It's called, I can't remember it. It's called Panobile, right? And there's actually 9 members. They're all from Burgenland, and they're actually all from pretty close to around that near something lake in the Gaul region. And so they formed this group. And what the group is, so you have to like basically make it into the group. And to be a part of it, you have to follow certain rules. And the rules essentially is they want to make terroir-driven wine from where they are, right? So we spoke before about the history of Austria kind of getting pushed down. There is always that, like, not urge, but like, I can't think of the word I'm thinking, but like, the risk is the wrong word, but you need to rebuild your industry, right? So like, hey, let's make a bunch of mass-produced wine and put a fun label on it, and like, let's make some money. Tendency, yeah, like, right? So they're kind of going against that. And so what they require is you only use indigenous grape varieties. So you can only use grape varieties from Burgenland or Austria. You can't use, like, you have to be like a biodynamic winemaker, right? So you can't use any pesticides, any herbicides. You have to practice lower yields, right? So you got to make more quality wine than quantity. And the last one was...
Did you say biodynamic already?
I said biodynamic, yeah.
Low oak.
Low oak. What does it say here? Use gentle aging wooden barrels. So you can use wooden barrels, but not any new oak. So we really want to get the expression of the grape variety, right? We've spoken about this in the past a bit, where sometimes the vessel can really take on or really change the wine from what it actually is. We've been doing our kind of W set and learning about like what oak can do, and like, don't get me wrong, it does add, for certain wines, it adds something really cool, but for this group in particular, they really want to express the terroir. So what do unencumbered, non-manipulated, native, indigenous yeast wines taste like from this little area? So they meet once a month and talk about ideas. Every 3 months, somebody else becomes the manager for those 3 months, so it's very much like a community kind of driven thing. And there's not like you wouldn't put a stamp on a bottle and be like, oh, they're part of that group. There's only 9 of them. But the other group members I've actually tasted before, and they're actually quite good wines too. So there is like a kind of like a sense of quality there.
They do put it on the bottle.
Do they?
Yeah. It says member of Panobile.
Oh, there you go.
It's almost like a way to like legislate it, like the AOC, DOCG in Italy does, without it being government driven, and it's supplier driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for Klaus Pressinger, I got another photo here. What they have is a bunch of small parcels all around. So this is that lake in the bottom corner here. I can't pronounce it. But all these little yellow things, so they have 16 different parcels, right? So they'll do some wines that are from one parcel only, or they do a blend from several different parcels. They're all quite close together. But I mean, we're talking like, looks like about, 20, 30 kilometers between the two furthest ones. So the last 2 wines that we're going to taste are a blend of several of the vineyards, right? So it's 100% Zweigelt, 100% Blaufränkisch, what we have right here. but they're taking grapes from a bunch of different vineyards. This is going to be all limestone vineyards, or Cockstein. That was my joke from before. I'm a child. Cockstein is a limestone soil, so that's going to add a little bit of minerality to it. Blaufränkisch inherently does have a little bit of minerality too, so it's going to be quite a mineral wine. But Blaufränkisch we're going to see is a little bit more muscular than that Zweigelt, right? A little bit more weight to it. It's got a little bit more grit, a little bit more tannin, nothing crazy though. These are going to be also 30-year-old vines, limestone soil, done in stainless steel, and then also done on 6 months of lees in that big barrel food. So it's made the same way as the wine we just had, different grape variety, and so any kind of extra structure this wine would have comes from the actual grape and not the vessel, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I think it's fun when you can taste two wines that are made stylistically the same, but they're different varieties from the same producer, because you can really get a feel for what the producer is trying to create with their wine. Same vintage. So it would have been, we probably should have tasted the two side by side so you could characteristically see the difference. The Zweigelt, if you remember, would be sort of silkier tannins, and I almost want to say like darker fruit, right? Like the blackberries, dark cherries, really, really soft and luscious. Whereas the Blaufränkisch is a little bit bolder. The tannins are a little bit grippier, it's a little bit chalkier. You're almost getting more of like the tart red fruits like the raspberries and the cranberries instead of the darker fruits. So they definitely have the same high acidity. They're both medium bodied, but just those flavor profiles that you get are a little bit different. And so it's cool to actually see, you know, where does the winemaking come in and where does the grape variety come in? Because this is same winemaker, same vintage, same area. And really, you're just noticing the differences in the grape variety there.
So the only difference at all in the last two wines is going to be the grape variety A, and then the soil type, right? So for the Zweigelt, we had pebble soil. For this is limestone soil. So yeah, very, very cool. This is, you know, at the beginning I really liked the Zweigelt a lot more. I'm digging the Blaufränkisch today. I like that it has that little extra kind of grip on your tongue.
Yeah.
A little bit more body to it.
Is this one on the lease too?
Yeah.
It's made the exact same way. Yeah. Yeah. What do you guys think? Which one do you like better? That's the one for you, Bruce? That's the winner?
This one? Yeah, Blaufränkisch. You guys?
I like the first one the best, but
Yeah. What about you guys?
Of the two that we just compared?
Yeah.
I like this one actually. It's a little funkier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, you know, on the nose, it's got a bit of breadth to it too. So Brettanomyces, we spoke in that kind of barnyardy funk. It's slight, but it's there more than the Zweigelt for sure.
Yeah.
Ooh. I really like these wines. I think he's a really cool winemaker. I think the whole package as well, like we spoke about, like these wines are pretty clean. They're nice. They're not crazy outside the box, but they're still a lot of fun. So it's
and good food wines. Like these wines realistically could pair with a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
So that makes it really approachable.
Yeah. And this wine, I didn't show you guys on the computer, but a lot of the wineries we deal with, right, are like, it's like someone making wine in a cave and they don't wash anything and they bury shit in the ground. Like this is a super
pristine.
modern, pristine, clean winemaking process, right? Like building's nice, everything, the stainless, like it's like bright lights, really, really clean. So a little bit
that
different.
would be actually fun to taste. Like if you think of natural winemakers, it's almost like there's a spectrum of them, right?
Yeah.
Like some of them are like farmers that can't keep track of anything and everything is a disaster and they just make wine and there's twigs that end up.
Yeah.
And like, so it's the same, like you're not using any chemicals, you're not using any machinery, you're doing sustainable practices, yet you're doing it in a facility that's basically like an operating room. So like how do you, a barn versus an operating room,
And you know what's interesting, like between that, like I was in Spain last September at the Suriel winery, where it's very much like an older style winery. So they do underground concrete. They do have stainless steel and they have amphores now, but the temperature is controlled because it's on a hill, so the bottom half is under the ground. But they are obsessed with cleanliness, right? So like they clean. So it's like an older style winery, but like really, 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 really clean.
Yeah.
And then you look at something like Lopez de Heredia, which literally has mold for 200 years, like hanging off the ceiling. And they're like, yeah, but it's like, it's created its own mini like ecosystem that if they were to clean it, the wine wouldn't be good anymore. But you're like, So the mold keeps
Yeah.
the wine, and you're like, yeah. And then you drink the wine, you're like, this is fucking delicious.
I mean, but if you think of like how like you make charcuterie and some cheeses, there there's safe mold that grows on. So
Yeah. Have you ever seen a picture of Lopez?
No, but I'm just gonna
You would
assume
die.
that
It looks like a cave full of back duck. Like
Oh.
one. Yeah, it's crazy.
No.
Yeah, there's like white icicles of funk hanging.
No.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we don't like.
It's fine.
They literally use the same barrels for hundreds of years. Like the barrels they use are like 120 years old, and they just rinse it out with like a hose. They're like, yeah, it's good. Put the more wine in, yeah. Whereas like this is gonna be a little bit more pristine, right? So yeah, it's crazy to think that for them to be able to do that, they have to have this kind of happy bacteria.
Yeah.
But if you were going to make a mass-produced wine and try to do that, like you could literally kill people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Any question, guys? Very quiet tonight. Any questions at all? Personal question for Bryce? No?
Did Tom and Steph have any questions?
Tom's always got hard questions. Tom's Googling shit on his phone.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Elmer has a question, yes.
What you got?
The only thing I
We
feel
have
a bit
the
uncomfortable about
ancestor.
is the philosopher like Steiner, who's an architect, choreographer, educator,
Yeah.
how he can influence winemaking.
So he's talking about Rudolf Steiner. So Rudolf Steiner is essentially the godfather of biodynamics, who was a philosopher, a teacher, architect. So he basically created the essence of what biodynamic agriculture is, right? So that hands-off approach, that kind of safe ecosystem where things come. And as you were saying, Mr. Amos, which is kind of cool, they obviously, like this winemaker obviously follows his process because they make biodynamic wine. As an architect, he didn't like horizontal lines. And if you look at their winery, even like the squares are kind of like a little bit like that. So, I mean, there is, when you first get into biodynamic wine, like to your point, like how someone like that can influence, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, it starts with an idea, but in my opinion, from the wine I've tasted, and I taste a lot of wine, like there is proof to it, right? There is some kind of reality to it, and I always go back to that lunar cycle example where the moon affects the tides. That's a fact. So how could it not affect plants, animals, and people?
Yeah, but do you believe in I'm gonna plant one horn of fertilizer in the ground?
That I could do that. There is a picture of a horn, so that's a practice. They put cow dung and a cow horn, and they bury it in the ground for the winter, and then they use that to spray in the vines. They use spraying chemicals. I don't know about that, but the wine tastes good. Yeah. So like I'm a big believer in like positive energy and like of course the lunar cycles. So I do think there is something to it. Yeah. And no one's died yet, so that's good. Does Tom have a question?
Yeah, if we had any more cat left.
Which one? The Ancestral?
I said we had some.
We got some. If you guys like this wine and you're looking to expand your cellar, we do have these for sale from them as well, which is some sparkling wine. This is outrageously good.
The Ancestral is so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It tastes like toasted almonds and fresh.
I drank it on
Break
Christmas
bed.
morning.
Yeah, it's a good all occasions drink.
Kids were opening presents at 6:30 a.m. and I was drinking Ancestral. Like, you guys, why'd you wake up so early?
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. There's no stupid questions, by the way. Everyone knows that.
You talked about sulfides or sulfur added to wine.
Mm-hmm.
What would be some of the characteristics in the flavor profile, or like why would you versus why wouldn't you add sulfur?
So it's a
Preservative?
preservative. Let's just stable it. It's a preservative, right? So when you add sulfites to it, the wine travels better. There's less of a risk of faults. In terms of flavor profile, I don't think if you add anything, it changes the wine.
I think the reason that they choose sulfites to do as a preservative, as an additive, is because it's neutral. So it's not going to impart any flavor or aroma to the wine, but it'll help that preservation. And you can control the amounts that you're using to it. And really, it's just for transportation until you get there. So there's really nothing that can happen over that time.
The flip side of sulfites is there's no like real science to prove this, but like if you have a friend who drinks a glass of red wine, gets a super bad headache, or gets like a red rash, sometimes that can be a result of people adding sulfites to it.
Or like higher amounts.
Like we're talking about like these mass-produced ones, right? That add a bunch of sulfites. Like these guys will use none. Like this would be no sulfites.
That actually has sulfites.
Oh, does it?
They all have sulfites.
Yeah,
Okay,
it contains sulfites. Yeah.
So very, very well. Yeah. Well, they all have to say contain sulfites, but unless it's under 10, that's going to change later. They use little to none. So people getting reactions to wine. Also, when you add sulfites too, like a sulfite-free wine. So I guess the cool thing is if you don't add sulfites, it might. I guess it wouldn't change the flavor, but if you, because it would have Brettanomyces, so if you added sulfates, it would get rid of that.
Well, it wouldn't get rid of it. It would prevent it from developing further.
Yeah,
So if there weren't, so Josh was talking about Brett as like a character, and it's kind of like horsey barnyard. And if there weren't sulfites, that could continue to develop in the bottle.
Which we have some wines that have a lot of Brett.
Yeah. So it's basically like the wine will change once it's in the bottle, whereas if you add sulfites, it offers some stability to the wine. So the wine will still age, but it'll just be a little bit more stable. Whereas if you don't add any sulfites, you could have 4 bottles of the wine, and 1 month you drink it and it tastes like this, and then 3 months later you drink it and it's a completely different wine. Like there's just no stability to it. You don't really know what to expect. Yeah, and that can be good. Like that's not a bad thing, but just know to expect that.
And the bottle kind of like bouncing off the walls, right? So there could be bottle variants. Sulfites too, like where this one has a little bit of that effervescence to it. Adding a little bit of sulfites, you like this would have been an extra.
It might prevent it from fermenting further, which would cause more bubbles in the bottle.
So if you add sulfites, it kills all of the yeast, right? So the yeast doesn't exist anymore, so there's no yeast to eat sugar to create alcohol. Whereas if you add a little bit, there might be a little bit of yeast left, so there's a second fermentation that happens inside the bottle, right? So yeast ate some sugar in this bottle, but there was a cork in it, so it trapped that CO2. That's why there's a little bit of that effervescence to it. I don't know if that answered your question or not. I like how we're like, can you give me a simple answer? I'm like, well, in the 1500s. Such a loser. Any other questions? New friends? No? We're in this safe space trust tree. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to put the tunes on. If you guys want any more wine, let us know.